My name is Margaret Hayes, and I'm 72 years old. I've lived long enough to know that betrayal doesn't always announce itself with thunder. Sometimes, it whispers. It was a Sunday evening in autumn when my world shifted. My son, David, had invited me to dinner at Rosewood Bistro, a cozy restaurant downtown where warm lighting made everyone look softer, kinder. David was 45 then, successful in real estate, with graying temples and my late husband's gentle eyes. Or so I thought. I remember the meal clearly. Roasted chicken with herbs. David talked about his work, his recent promotion. We laughed about old memories. For those 2 hours, I felt blessed. Then I excused myself to use the restroom, and in my distraction, I left my phone on the table beside my napkin. When I returned 5 minutes later, I noticed something strange. The young waitress, a woman in her early 30s with beautiful braided hair pinned in an elaborate crown, was standing unusually close to our table. Her name tag read, Simone. She had kind eyes, but in that moment, they held something else. Urgency. Fear, perhaps. As I approached, Simone gently touched David's arm and stepped back. David's face had gone pale. Everything all right? I asked, sliding back into my seat. Fine, Mom, David said quickly. Too quickly. Just asking about dessert. But Simone's expression told a different story. She looked at me with something like pity, then locked eyes with David one more time before walking away. The rest of dinner felt hollow. David seemed distracted, checking his watch, fumbling with his fork. We skipped dessert. He drove me home in silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something nagged at me. A splinter I couldn't see but could feel. 3 days passed. Then, on Wednesday afternoon, my doorbell rang. It was Simone. She stood on my porch in civilian clothes, jeans and a burgundy sweater, her braids now loose around her shoulders. In her hands, she held a manila envelope. Mrs. Hayes, she said softly. May I come in? I made tea. We sat in my living room, the afternoon light filtering through lace curtains my mother had made 60 years ago. Simone's hands trembled slightly as she held her cup. I almost didn't come, she began. I thought maybe ignorance is kinder. But if it were my mother. She paused, gathering courage. When you left your phone on the table, it was face up. A message notification came through. I saw it. I shouldn't have looked, but I couldn't help it. Simone opened the envelope and pulled out printed screenshots. Text messages between David and someone named Rachel. The messages went back months. Intimate messages, planning messages. My son David declaring his love for Rachel, who was married to his best friend, Thomas Chen. But there was more. Financial records. David had been helping Rachel siphon money from Thomas's business account. Small amounts at first, then larger. They were planning to leave together, start new lives in Colorado. Let Thomas discover the financial ruin later. There's video too, Simone whispered. The restaurant has security cameras with audio. That night, after you went to the restroom, I leaned in and told David I'd seen the messages. I told him he had 1 week to confess to Thomas, or I would send him everything. That's what you saw when you came back. I sat frozen, the tea growing cold in my hands. Why? I finally asked. Why would you do this for a stranger? Simone's eyes filled with tears. My father was Thomas Chen's kind of man. Trusting, loyal, hardworking. When I was 16, his business partner and his wife did to him what David and Rachel are doing to Thomas. By the time he found out, his business was destroyed. He had a heart attack 6 months later. He died at 51. She wiped her eyes. I couldn't watch it happen again. Not when I could stop it. We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, autumn leaves danced in the wind. What do you need from me? I asked. Nothing, Simone said. I already sent Thomas everything yesterday. He deserves to know. He deserves to protect himself. But I thought, a mother should know who her son truly is. After Simone left, I sat alone as darkness filled the room. I thought about the little boy who used to bring me dandelions, the teenager who cried in my arms when his father died, the man who called me every Sunday. How long had I been loving a memory while the real David became someone I didn't recognize? The following week was chaos. Thomas confronted David and Rachel. The affair was exposed. Thomas filed for divorce and pressed charges for embezzlement. Rachel was arrested. David lost his job when his company learned he'd helped facilitate fraud. David called me, sobbing, begging for understanding, claiming he'd fallen in love, made mistakes, but surely I could forgive him? You weren't just unfaithful to Rachel's marriage, I told him quietly. You tried to destroy an innocent man's life, for money, for convenience. That's not a mistake, David. That's a choice you made every single day for months. I told him I needed time. I didn't know if I could forgive this. Maybe someday, but not today. 6 months later, I sat in a courtroom as Thomas was awarded everything in the divorce. Rachel received a suspended sentence and probation for the embezzlement. David's legal troubles were still unfolding, but something else happened in those 6 months. I became friends with Simone. We met for tea every Thursday. She told me about her dreams of opening her own restaurant. I told her about my late husband, my life, my disappointments, and I met Thomas Chen, a quiet man, 44 years old, with silver-streaked hair and sad eyes that were learning to hope again. He worked as an architect, designing spaces where families built memories. I trusted so easily, Thomas told me once over coffee. I thought that was strength. Now, I wonder if it was just naivety. Trust is strength, I said. Betrayal is weakness. Don't let what they did change who you are. Thomas and I grew close. Not romantically, though there was a tenderness between us. He was rebuilding his life. I was reconciling with mine. A year after that dinner at Rosewood Bistro, Simone opened her restaurant. She called it Second Chances. Thomas designed it, incorporating warm wood tones and windows that let in golden evening light. At the opening, Simone pulled me aside. I think about that night all the time, she said. What if I'd stayed silent? What if I'd decided it wasn't my business? You saved someone, I told her. That's always your business. I still think about David. My son is working in a warehouse now, living in a small apartment, attending court-mandated therapy. He writes to me sometimes, letters of apology that feel genuine but incomplete. Maybe someday, we'll rebuild what was broken. Maybe forgiveness will come. But I learned something at 72 that I wish I understood at 22. Love isn't blind loyalty. Real love sees clearly and acts with courage, even when courage costs everything. Simone saw the truth and chose kindness over comfort. That's the kind of love that changes lives. I visit Second Chances every Thursday now. Simone always reserves my favorite table, the one in the corner where afternoon light pools like honey. Thomas usually joins me. We talk about architecture and memories, about the families we've lost and the families we're building from what remains. And sometimes, when the restaurant is quiet and the evening light turns everything gold, I look at these two beautiful people who emerged from other people's wreckage, and I think, this is grace. This is what it means to find beauty in the breaking. The secret above the table that day wasn't just about betrayal. It was about a young woman brave enough to whisper the truth, even knowing the storm it would bring. That kind of courage doesn't make noise. It doesn't announce itself. Sometimes, it just whispers, and if you're lucky enough to hear it, it can save your life.